Well, good morning, guys. I am having ground beef today. Uh, we get a cow killed about once a year, and so right before that cow, we go pick it up at the butcher. I go through my freezers and find any ground beef that I've got left in there from last year. I pull it out and can it. It's a great thing. It's simple. It's easy, and if I've got a meal coming up and I know I'm planning a meal, then I'll get my ground beef out of the freezer. But sometimes you come home and you end up with kids or you have company that just shows up, and instead of having to thaw your ground beef and everything, I just pull it off the shelf. It ends up looking like this. This is ground beef I canned last year. You can see the juice in there. You can see a little bit of fat floating around, but not much. I say ground beef, but when I say ground beef, I more mean like ground round. Since we grass feed our cows and then kill them, and then we don't have much fat on it, so it's more like ground round. Now I've watched a bunch of videos how other people can ground beef. And there's a bunch of different ways. Some people do it completely raw. Some people completely cook it. I usually do mine about somewhere in the middle. It's not raw, but it's not done either. It's just, I'll spit it out here to show you what I mean. It's up. It's pink, but it's brown. It's a little in between. I'm just dripping the stuff everywhere. It's not quite done, and it's not quite not done. So that's where I use mine, and I do put salt in mine. Some people don't. And there's a bunch of different ways people does it. The main thing though is it has to be pressure canned at 90 minutes. Meat is 90 minutes automatically. Whatever, if it's got meat in it, 90 minutes, all right? I do add salt. Salt is a preservative. They say nowadays, oh, you don't have to add salt, you don't have to add salt. What did they do in the old days when they hung meat up? They covered it with salt to cure it. And so salt is a preservative. So I always put salt in my meat, or in anything I can, for that matter, food-wise. Not jams and jelly, a whole different ballgame. We're not going there today. But, so I did salt my meat. Now, my jars have all been sterilized, and it's easier if they're in a wide mouth jar, but I've got a bunch of small mouth jars, and so that's what I'm using. It's what I've got. So, I have, a lot of people, when they can theirs, they say they fill it with beef broth. And what I do is I fill my jar. Each of these jars ends up being about a pound of ground beef. And I fill my jars. Well, when I put my ground beef in here raw, I added water. So you're almost like you're boiling the meat. And you just keep stirring it. Now, the consistency of the meat when it comes out, if you pack it raw and try to can it, it's going to be one big hard chunk. If you cook it completely and then can it, it turns into what I would say Taco Bell meat. It's real fine and smushy. If you've got it about like I do, you can chop it up like this. I chop mine up fine when I cook it anyway. And it's not quite that fine, but it's not Taco Bell meat either. Now, I know, and so it's in between. I know a lot of people don't like it when they open it. They say, oh, it smells like dog food. It smells like canned meat. And they can dog food. And they put protein in it. Guess what? That's what it's going to smell like. It don't taste like that, okay? Especially you take this out, you add taco seasoning to it. You put it in chili, you put it in a casserole. It's just ground beef. And it don't taste like dog food. Well, I've never tasted dog food, but don't plan on it either. So anyway, but this is just easy. It's simple. If the power goes out, guess what? You've got meat. Even if you just put salt and pepper on it and eat it. But you usually, like me, I've got a pantry full of other canned goods. I can add chicken gumbo to it and some mustard and ketchup and have sloppy joes, or just add some taco seasoning to it, or whatever. It's just real simple. Now, if you got ground beef and it's your 80-20 or whatever that is, so it's got a lot of fat, you can put it in, you can drain off the grease. And let me tell you what I do if I'd had that. I do it like I do my chicken stock. I'll pour I get another big pan, pour everything through a colander so the meat separates out from the broth, and then I have one of these handy dandy things. This is a fat separator, and when you pour your liquid in here, of course any oils or fat will go to the top, and so then all your broth will be at the bottom. And this, you can open this, so it opens, and then your fat is sitting up there, all your broth's at the bottom. You open the bottom, guess what's going to come out? The broth. And so you take it down until, you know, it's real close to the fat coming out, and you stop. You dump the fat, and you do it again. So, if you've got ground beef that's got a lot of fat in it, I would take it and run through a separator, just so when you put it back in, because you want juice in your jar. And, I mean, some people do that, and then they put the beef broth in it. Well, I put water in there and cooked it, and it's beef broth. Basically, it's beef broth. So I just use the water out of here. And as you can see, mine didn't have no fat in it. I didn't separate that. There's just very, very little on top, little white you can see up in there. And that's not going to hurt. It's not going to hurt if you have a lot in there. But I like to separate mine out. But that's up to you. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my meat in here. Just poured it. Of course, my jars have all been sterilized. I put boiling water in them earlier and cleaned them all out, make sure they were all sterilized. So I'm going to put my meat in it. Let me get me a spoon to push it down. Push it down up to about an inch of headspace. Now, an inch of headspace, when they say that, that's automatically that bottom ring right there. You don't have to measure that every time. If you get it to that bottom ring, you know that's an inch of headspace, okay? That's just an easy given. So that's basically, that's where I'm at, an inch of headspace, and you can see there's juice in it. I haven't had to add any. I just push it down with my spoon a little bit. And may have to get, put a little bit more in there. As I push it down with my spoon, that's also getting air bubbles out. So I'm not having to debubble. There you go. You can see it in there. You can see the juice. I can add just a little bit because it's not quite up to that ring right there. But that's what it looks like. I'll add just a little bit more here. Where's my spoon? Push it down. Yep, it's got plenty in there. Now you remember when you got your canner going, make sure you put some white vinegar in it, and that'll take away from your jars turning white because of the hard water. Another thing you want to do, remember, is to always clean the mouth of your jar before you put your flats on it. Now I always put some vinegar on my cloth and then go around the top. That makes sure there's no salt, no grease, or anything that might keep it from not sealing and popping the way we want it to. Now I have my flats and rings going, so they're nice and hot. Pull one out there, flip it over, put it on. You remember, just barely when it sit that on the set that on there and turn that. Now when your jar stops turning, then pick it up and just barely turn it a little bit more. Oh, I didn't have it on there. Let's try that again. Get on there. Okay, now it's down on there. There it's turning. Now, just barely a little bit more. And that's so when it's bubbling in the canner, this ring will bubble and come off and then open up. So you just put it to its finger tight. Make sure you get that ring on there. I didn't have that a while ago. And then just barely a little squeeze. Just barely, not a lot. Don't crank it. No, you don't want that. You'll have that pucker. Just put that on there and put it in your canner. And remember, it's 90 minutes. Now, I use my one weight that's 15 pounds. I want the most I can get. 15 pounds of pressure for 90 minutes in your canner. All right? Now, that's how I do ground beef. I showed you what it looks like. It's simple to open. It's simple to eat in anything, make anything with it. I can't think of anything that I've forgotten to tell you. I hope not anyway. If you have questions, put them down in the comments and I'll try to get back to them. You can do chicken the same way. Now, I do raw packed chicken when I do it. I cut it up into cubes and put it in there. And I do put chicken broth on that though. And then, I'll put, for pints, I'll put a half a teaspoon of salt in there. For a quart, a full teaspoon. And can that. And it's just like, you know, here you open the little cans of chicken. That's exactly what it is when you open that can of chicken. Well, this is the same thing. If you was to get canned beef in a can at the store, it'd be just like this, okay? So, anyway, I hope that you'll do some canning. Remember, there's a few things you need to know, so make sure you've watched some videos or contacted your county extension office for a canning class. There are some things you do need to know about canning, especially if you're doing anything with cream or milk, because, you know, the FDA says no, 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 no. And our grandparents did it for years. And it's because of botulism. And so you need to know temperatures and pressures amounts and all that kind of stuff if you're even going to attempt to do creams or milks or anything like that, all right? But I hope that you'll join along, and we'll see you next time, all right, guys? Have a good day. Bye.